What happened to Kissy Missy in Chapter 4? Well, when I ask that question, I'm actually referring to two separate instances. First being how, after Chapter 3, she was randomly attacked by a mysterious being where she miraculously survived, but with severe burns and injuries which they never explained for the rest of the game. And secondly, when at the end of the chapter, the prototype blows up a room with us and Kissy inside, where we fall down and are only left with her arm, leaving her fate up to a mystery. So what happened with her? Well, first, regarding the beginning incident, as you probably know, we start the game with Poppy telling us to leave as she goes to retrieve Kissy from the top, which allows us to explore the caves where we continually hear the screams of one of the Wuggies, likely Kissy, midway through her attack. Before then, a few minutes later, while exploring the prison, she randomly drags us to the side to protect us as the prototype was lurking the area, finally letting us see our good friend Kissy back again. But this time, she has some deep burn marks, bandages, and even a large sling around her arm. But then this leaves the question, who attacked her and what caused her to be burned like this? Well, I am left with two main suspects for now, Doughy the Dough Man, if you can believe it, and the prototype. Starting off with Doughy, while he is generally friendly with us, we have seen that he has the tendency to turn evil and even attack his own friends on a whim, which could definitely include Kissy. Plus, in terms of ability, it would make sense he would be able to be up here, as Doughy is literally able to turn into dough and move around the entire factory at ease. In fact, in a VHS tape from Chapter 4, we heard that Doughy actually had a tendency to leave Safe Haven and the prison to go look outside during fits, where he contemplated escaping the factory.
I'm here, outside the prison. I could make for the exit. It's all I'd wanted.
He never acted upon these urges and instead would always go back down, but I wonder if it's possible he could have been having one of these fits where he ran away while we were exploring the factory, and after hearing us accessing the prison's lift, he could have ran up there and encountered Kissy Missy, where he attacked her out of pure rage. I mean, in my opinion, this theory actually does make a shocking amount of sense. The only problem with it is we see Doughy reacting to Kissy's state in-game when he first sees her out of concern, like he was completely unaware of what happened to her in the first place.
Missy, goodness, what happened?
Which wouldn't necessarily make sense if he was the one who did it himself, unless as he shifted personalities from friendly to angry, he switched consciousness and memories every time. A more likely culprit in my opinion for this though is 1006, the prototype, because well, for one, he's the main villain of the entire game and we know he was following us around the factory as we always saw him right at the crime scene after we killed a toy to collect them, giving him the perfect opportunity to make his first attack while Kissy was alone. But also, whenever we leave Poppy alone to go get Kissy, we first encounter her again in the prison as they drag us into a crevice, hiding from who we now know is the prototype himself, seeming like they were trying to run away from him actively at that moment on their way back down, which makes it seem relatively likely that maybe the prototype had jumped on Kissy, attacking her at the end of Chapter 3, before Poppy sent the lift back up to retrieve her at the last moment, where they then ran from him all the way until this point, where we make our way to the safe haven, the only area the prototype couldn't enter, and Kissy could get healed. This one I think is a lot more likely because in the end of the game we see the prototype was still following us the entire time, and with only one chapter left after this in Chapter 5, it's about time that 1006 makes himself known and attacks us. But now the only thing neither of these theories really explain is why was Kissy physically burned on over half of her face like she had been lit on fire or something? It's a major detail, half of her body is literally ash, but again, it's something they don't ever explain. And while some people have made some stretches saying that maybe the person that actually attacked Kissy could have been someone like a Simon Smoke bigger body who could spit fire, or even that the prototype himself could emit fire, which are things to at least consider, but some other theories could possibly point to the red gas, which is seen all over Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 and could have played a part as well, since we learned in Chapter 4 that it was flammable, and so Kissy could have sparked something during the fight or while they were running away when the red smoke was around, causing her to burst into fire. That's exactly what happened to Catnap when a spark hit him in his final boss fight. He blew up into flames. I don't know, let me know what you think down below, and also subscribe while you're down there for more theories like this in the future. But moving on from Kissy's burn section, she just can't catch a break, because after this happens at the very end of the game, we learn that the prototype had strapped our explosives around our hiding spot, which caused Poppy to run away out of fear, and after the explosion finally happens, Kissy grabs onto us to try and hold us up, but her weak arm then breaks off as we fall down to the labs alone, which has led to a lot of people thinking that Kissy Missy was officially dead. Her arm fell off, and after the explosion, she is nowhere to be found, so it seems like this time she might actually be gone. In fact, they even tried to bait and switch us in the final ending when they show out the window a character that looks like Kissy and appears to be pink, suggesting she survived, but as he runs up, we see it was actually Huggy the whole time. Also, as a side note, I've seen a lot of people say this might have actually been a hallucination, since in the final scene we are surrounded by the red gas, and so the Huggy we see here might have been Kissy the whole time. But as we can see, Huggy is missing his left arm while Kissy is missing her right, confirming they are in fact different. But then what about Kissy? What happened? Is she alive? Well, if we look back at the scene again very slowly, we can see that Kissy grabs us, her hand slowly breaks apart as we begin to fall, but while we fall, Kissy Missy is right here, clearly not only still alive, but completely avoided the fall entirely, sitting at the top. And while we fall all the way down to only see her hand, that's because Kissy is still inside of the ventilation watching this all happen completely unharmed, meaning that Kissy is in fact 100% alive, at least in this very moment, and she just ended up losing a hand. So for all of the Kissy fans, myself included, we can take a breather at least for now. The only big worry about this though is we heard the prototype stomping around before the explosion as he claimed he was coming up there.
I'm going to come up there.
So he easily could have attacked Kissy once again, finishing her off if he caught her still alive. But regardless of that, assuming this speculation is correct and she does end up living, this brings up the question of where did she go after this, and will she appear in chapter 5? Well, honestly, for now, we could pretty confidently assume Kissy and Poppy have to both be in chapter 5. There's no way they would just leave the rest of these storylines on a complete cliffhanger forever. We could pretty certainly say we will at least find out what happens to both of them in the final chapter, even though we are entering the labs, which is supposed to be top secret. So maybe it'll be our job in the next game to let them in after we wake up, because we know there is no way for them to enter the labs. That's the whole reason we were supposed to get the Omni hand from the doctor, is that so we could access these locked off areas and reach the prototype. What I also think is intriguing is how Huggy Wuggy and Kissy Missy may interact, because right after our fall with Kissy, we enter the labs where Huggy was stationed, waiting for the right moment to strike where they were right next to each other. And again, assuming they are both in chapter 5, they will more than likely interact in some way, something we actually have kind of seen them do in chapter 3's official song and music video by CG5, Sleep Well, which, while the canonicity of the music video is generally up for debate, the general theme of the song is canon and the events itself are as well, while the specific shots we see are a bit more questionable. But back at the time, it was very interesting that in one of these shots we see Kissy and Huggy lying together in play care, trying to presumably cope with the lyrics of the song as they now realize their lives were permanent and could do nothing but try to survive in their new, bigger bodies. And if this shot is meant to be taken literally, and it is canon, which again is a big fat maybe, it could show that Kissy and Huggy had interacted positively with each other in some way as bigger bodies, which I guess would line up because Kissy, the toy version, was created to be Huggy's better half, a sequel to him, obviously implying they were in a relationship, which could also apply to their bigger bodies. I honestly don't know, but I hope we learn in chapter 5. But check out this video to see me break down the rest of the ending.